Right.
So even though...
Listen to this. You'll love this. One of the great fascinations of golf is the instinctive feeling a player gets soon after he's taken the game up that there is an explanation for everything that takes place, that the seeming mystery of how to hit the ball well and hit it well regularly is not mysterious at all, that it is possible to arrive at answers that will be as clear-cut and irrefutable as the solution the master detective unfolds in the last chapter of the mystery novel. All of us, quite like detectives, set off on our own separate paths. He goes on to say, today's brilliant deduction all too often folds under deeper examination and becomes tomorrow's dead end.
Yep.
And more than that, with no trouble at all, you can get off on the wrong track, increase your error by studiously taking the wrong turn at another crucial fork in the road, and before you know it, you are lost in a labyrinth of your own making.
Wow. And I'm going to go back to, back in 2008, that was the marketing strategy that I handed Chuck Quinton on a platter, that there weren't fundamentals. So what Hogan's saying is 100% right, but we do have some absolute fundamentals that somebody can hone, like he's saying that's what they need to do. And the brain loves knowing exactly what it's doing. As long as it's vague, it can't learn.
Yeah, and what's cool, and I think we need to remember this moving forward is, and I don't know how we want to market this, but he was a student of the game. He was very cautious about writing this book. He wanted to make sure that what he wrote was, in essence, the right things for the players out there to grow the game of golf, right? So could you imagine if Ben Hogan had met Alisontggolf? He would have won 9 more majors. He would have had the most majors of anybody. Why? Because it took him all those years, and then he had a bad car accident, and then he had to recover. It took him all those years to find those movements that came back and gave him a repeatable swing that he could count on. It was years of playing competitive golf. He said, look, competitive golf versus regular golf, it's like night and day, right? He was going through what everybody else is doing, which is trying to find that repeatable motion, not the repeatable swing plane. He focused on what needed to be had. And it took him years to find it. And what you've done is you said, look, I can give you what took Ben Hogan 30 years to figure out.
And he was unable to articulate it because this is not something you can talk to somebody about. It's 100% experiential learning. It's a nonverbal form of learning. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. So what you do, you just accelerated the learning curve by giving them the ability to tap into the right muscle movements using TED.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to explain it. I wish I could talk like you.
I talk in such layman terms, but that's the reality of it. And I think that's what is going to capture those golfers out there that, tired of the insanity and going around doing this, the same thing over and over again, trying one new thing. Hogan did it. He would try something and he would make it prove itself out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he'd go, that was time wasted. But like any true inventor and entrepreneur out there, he didn't see, I don't think he really saw those mistakes as mistakes. I think he's kind of like, who was it? Einstein. Or no, maybe it was Benjamin Franklin.
All of them, all innovators.
They all saw an error, a mistake, as one step closer to finding the magic, the solution. And
doesn't that make sense with TED training? That's why we have R&W training. That the golfer himself is going through that experiment, so to speak. He's having an experiment with his own swing, and that's why we have them actually practice the wrong move, have it alternate between the two.
Right. Your brain's way more amenable to accept, right? Okay, that was my old way, and now this feels way better.
Yes.
Right? That's the old way. God, I hate that. I can't believe I swung like that.
Yes.
Here's the new way.
And with the old instruction, before me doing this or TED training, people would have said, well, under pressure, your old swing comes back. And I'm thinking, that's not with what I do. That's not possible. My students can't even find their old setup. And when you put them in their old setup, if I show a picture, we put them in their old setup. That's exactly what they say, what you just said. They're like, this feels horrible. I could never swing from here. So neurological change means just that. You don't somehow all of a sudden magically your brain says, oh, I don't like the strong brain map. I'm going to go digging for other brain map that's not even strong right in the middle of a round of golf. Yeah, I don't think so.
Right.
That's how it works.
Think about this for a second. Ben Hogan said there is absolutely no reason why the average golfer can't shoot in the 70s. Knowing proper body movement.
Agreed.
Now, what do we have in the golf world today? We have 90% of the players are bogey or worse.
Chaos. We have total chaos.
Total chaos. And yet nobody has sat there and said, kind of stepped out of the ether, I guess, and said, and the insanity, and said, hold on, why is it that if we have all this wonderful instruction out there and these top instructors and all these YouTube channels, why is it that this has never improved?
Yeah, handicaps haven't dropped in, I think, last time I checked, it was somewhere in the 80s. No one's getting any better. But
nobody is getting any better, and yet nobody is asking the big question.
Well,
what is it that we are doing, and we're not getting any results?
Well, remember, it's like I told you, sharing with clients, that if you treated your marriage or your business the way you treat your golf game, you'd fail at all of it, because you can't. That's what Hogan's saying. You can't just jump around. You can't jump from one YouTube and one golf instructor to the next, and you cannot take golf instruction from somebody who only treats effects and not cause. The industry's in a problem because they don't know what the cause is. They're so busy focusing on the effects, which is what Hogan said the body can make. When you're pointing out observations of the swing, when people are always talking about the swing, they'll talk about 30 freaking different things in backswing alone. But there's only 3, maybe 4 movements that create all of that. The focus, they got the ladder leaning against the wrong wall. I keep saying that. They just... they're focusing on all the effects and the observations versus the origin. That's the key to science and scientific discovery, is being able to discern the difference between something that you're observing and then being able to figure out what the origin of that is. And funny, the word origin is a synonym for fundamental. It's primary. It's not secondary.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when you point out,
focused on results and not on the origin is a massive problem we have in this world.
Because that's all the golf industry knows. There is no other education. No one teaches origin. They only teach observation. So that's why when people get together and they talk about the golf swing, I know a lot about the golf swing. I'll guarantee you do. But what you don't know is the origin and how it happens. So when you look up science, the basic fundamental about observation and origin, that's huge, because observations don't help anybody.
Right. Well, yeah. No, there's no doubt, because the reality is I'd like to think I know quite a bit about the swing itself and hands and position and whatever, but then you ask me the simple questions and it all goes back to origin.
Right.
And I'm like, what?
How do you make that happen? What is the sequence of movement? How do you get them there? Now, we don't need to talk anymore about the golf swing in the industry. We've got more information, but we have no way to apply the information. And that's why when people confuse TED training and what I do or what we're doing with biomechanics, I am not biomechanics. I am not kinesiology. It's more like engineering, because the definition of engineering, you can tell I'm big on dictionaries and thesaurus because I am. The definition of engineering is making practical application of the sciences. I'm taking the science of biomechanics, body mechanics, and the knowledge. Kinesiology is basically about body movement. That's what kinesiology means. But I'm not stopping there with the intellectual information. I'm going to jump into, now it's an engineering process. Now I'm going to make practical application out of what we know. That is the missing gap in golf. There is no application for what we know.
Right.
We just all want to sit around and talk about what we know, and that's my problem as a teacher. Even had that with you. Oh, okay, I intellectually understand it, so lesson over, let me go to the driving range. And I'm like, okay, you just wasted your money and my time, because just because you understand it doesn't mean anything to applying
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so like Hogan said, they're focused on the result, not the action.
Exactly.
I think you're focused on the result, not the origin. Not action, origin.
Right. The origin, and that is a synonym for fundamentals. So that's in that presentation I still need you to watch. I need to put it on my YouTube channel, that 2008. And I give the definition of a fundamental before I challenge people in the audience to come up with one fundamental. Because Jack Nicklaus contradicted Hogan, Hogan contradicted Jack, and you just go down the line. So who was right on stance, who was right on setup, who was right on takeaway, because they all say something completely different.
I started to realize these guys have no idea what they're critiquing in this player. They had no idea.
Yeah, I have a hard time watching it because I'm like, that's why on the show, the YouTube, The Insanity of Golf, there's going to be 15 minutes dedicated once a week to what does that mean? What you just said, can you explain to me what does that mean? And no one can answer you. How about the swings from the ground up? That not one person yet has ever been answered that question, and everybody throws that phrase around, yeah, I got a lot of knowledge. It starts from the ground up. Okay, what's that mean?
Right.
It's not even accurate.
I think all the stuff that they've done they're really cool, because then you can see, to me, it's like, don't let that dictate how you make your move. Make the move and check it with the data. If it improves, then obviously the movement worked. But don't, you know what I mean? It's like putting your hands in a certain spot didn't make my takeaway any better.
Well, you know what? What you just said is really important. So let's say somebody's on a force plate, these new force plates. And a couple times during a lesson, they hit 30 balls, and 2 of them, it was right. This is the problem with the force plate. The force plate is diagnostic. We need it. I'm not saying we don't need it. It is not a teaching tool, because that student will get off of that force plate. His brain and body have no idea what he did correctly those 2 times to get that effect. So how is he going to go away and practice when there's nothing for the brain and the nervous system to latch onto? Because they don't actually know the origin and how or what it was they did to make it right. So even diagnostic biomechanics studies, force plates, we need all this stuff for data, right? TrackMan, that's an absolute. But what people need to understand, that is a diagnostic tool. It gives us data and feedback. It is not a teaching tool. It cannot teach you how to fix it.
Yeah, I'm saying the exact same thing. That's all I'm saying is at the end of the day, it's the same thing with going to the range. You hit 1 or 2 perfect balls, and you think your brain doesn't know what you did.
Right.
To hit the perfect ball.
So how's it going to memorize it?
300 balls trying to find that movement. We thought it was our hands. Well, I keep doing that with my hands, but I don't get the same feeling I had when I hit that ball. So then I make an adjustment with my legs. And guess what? That didn't do it either. But somehow, some way, sequentially, I got in the right place in the box. I did all the right things, but because I didn't understand any of it, I could never duplicate that feeling.
Right. So
I went around chasing this mouse all over a maze and never caught it. Right. And then I go back and I'm frustrated. I'm like, golly, man, I hit 10 really nice shots in a row. And all of a sudden I couldn't hit the right shot to save me.
Right. And that's part of the problem is, unless you know what you're doing, like Ben Hogan said, unless you are actually controlled, you have learned the skill of body motion and you know how to control it. And if you don't have that, then you don't know what you did, and you're chasing a paper dragon, so to speak, or a mouse.
Right.
And if you don't know
it's insanity.
Yeah, it is insanity. That's why I call it the insanity of golf. So if you're chasing this paper dragon or a mouse, and how on earth is your brain going to memorize something that it doesn't even know what it is? You haven't given it anything to memorize. It doesn't know where it is. So I always say, I did that, when I was teaching the pros at Old Warson, I drew a circle and then just kept drawing the circle over and over, like like the computer, when your computer gets frozen or it's thinking and that little circle comes on. That's what your brain's doing. It hears you, it understands, it's frustrated, it desperately wants to give you the answer, but it doesn't have an answer. It's just still going in circles until you give it a definitive black or white answer. This is what weight shift means. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. And the golfer has a capacity to produce it both right and wrong. You cannot teach the brain an ingrained, consistent, repeatable swing because your brain has no idea what you're asking it to do. There's no definitive answer.
Right. No, this is such good stuff. And I appreciate you spending the hour with me on it because I'm learning like crazy.
Well,
your
your goal of being one of the best teachers in the country, that's my goal to help you do that. And I think that through this TED training and your experiences as an amateur trying to get better, I think that's huge because you can get into their shoes. You're able to explain things like you just did today that I can't articulate because I've never been in their shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah, you really can bring the point home and speak their language. I'm still speaking a very elementary language.
Right. I've experienced all their frustrations, and so is every pro out there. Right.
Yes.
You can't talk to those guys. You can't hear what they went through. You don't know the story of how they found their swing.
Yes.
Right.
And again, with the tour pros, if you're talking good amateur golfers or, there's 1% of really good amateur golfers that just have great mind to body connection. When you're talking professional athlete, you're up there in the 0.0001% of people. They can't tell you why they're as good as they are.
Right. I go back to Connor, right? When Connor got on a bike when he was 8 years old, he was beating 15-year-olds. He naturally pedaled more fluently, had more pedal fluidity. His body was it was like he was born to sit on that stupid bike seat and turn his legs over.
Yeah, and he ends up going pro. And you think about
Right.
a baseball player. So these people have skills, and I think that the other thing that TED training has done is to get people's eyes off of the tour pro. If that is your basis, so if we were going to do a scientific analysis of golf instruction, the foundation of it begins with somebody's eyes watching the best in the world, and they're all swinging different, and that becomes the model. You can't do that.
Right.
Right.
And in reality, they don't really swing differently.
No, they don't. It's all so much, and we're going to help the industry understand that. There's hardly any difference the only thing that changes is the degree of shoulder elevation and degree of elbow flexion and wrist. That's it. Everything else is the same. And that's only in the right arm.
Hi, Allison here. Thanks for watching that clip. And if you enjoyed it and you're interested in scheduling your own one-on-one Zoom lesson, just click the link below. Thanks.